Hi, my name is Dr. Catherine Hughes from Crime Psych. I'm a criminal psychologist, and if you've seen me before, you know that I've done a number of these psychological analysis videos in the past where I draw on available research findings to give an informed opinion of what an offender's behaviour can reveal about their psychology. Therefore, this isn't a diagnosis, it's an informed opinion. In this particular video, I'm going to be discussing Angela Yates, who murdered her 5 children in 2001. Many thanks to Lakeshire Goodwin from YouTube for suggesting this case for an analysis today. In all of my videos, I do try to focus more on the psychology of the behaviour. However, it is sometimes necessary to include some details of the crime. Therefore, this video contains some details of complex psychiatric conditions and the murder of very young children. As always, I'm going to give you a very brief overview of the case and of the offender. Then I'm going to talk about what we know of the upbringing and childhood of the offender. Then I'll discuss the behaviours during the crimes that reveal psychological aspects of the offender. And of course I will discuss all of the mental illnesses and treatment that she's had. If you do want to learn more about the psychology of crime and criminal behaviour, I do have a number of courses which are available online via my website, and I will leave a link to that in the video description. Some of them are free, some of them are paid with a money back guarantee. You get a certificate of completion for all of my online courses. Angela Yates was born in Texas in America in 1964. She's the youngest of 5 children. She had suffered from bulimia during her teenage years, and she'd also suffered from depression, and at 17 she spoke to a friend about committing suicide. Yates completed a 2-year pre-nursing programme. From 1986 until 1994, she worked as a registered nurse at the University of Texas. Angela was very clearly an intelligent young lady who did quite well academically. She did struggle though with her mental health from her teens. However, this can be fairly common for many teens. The feelings of depression had clearly been ongoing and severe enough to drive her to talking about suicide. When people talk about committing suicide, they actually believe that the world would be a better place without them in it. People with depression can often feel as though they're a burden to their loved ones. In the summer of 1989, she met Russell Yates, who's better known as Rusty. They moved in together and they were married in 1993. After they married, they said that they'd have as many babies as nature allowed, and they bought a 4-bedroom house in Texas. She then stopped working and gave birth to a boy in 1994, and they named him Noah. After this birth, Angela had a hallucination in which she was hurting somebody with a knife. Very shortly after he was born, Rusty accepted a job offer in Florida, and so the family relocated to a small trailer. They then went on to have 2 more children before moving back to Houston. Then they had their 4th child. Following the birth of this child, Angela suffered with postpartum depression. On the 16th of June 1999, Rusty came home to find her shaking and chewing her fingers. The following day, she attempted to kill herself. She was admitted into hospital and she was prescribed antidepressants. However, it was clear to Rusty that she was still feeling suicidal. Therefore, she was then readmitted and Angela was diagnosed with major depressive disorder. She was then prescribed an antipsychotic medication, which did seem to help initially. She was improving on this medication and they moved into a small house. But then she stopped taking the medication and she started self-harming again. However, by the following month, she'd suffered a nervous breakdown and ended up being hospitalised twice more that summer because of 2 suicide attempts. She was then again diagnosed with major depressive disorder with possible schizophrenia diagnosis. Dr. Eileen Starbach was the psychiatrist who treated her. She testified in court that she warned the couple not to have any more children because it would lead to further psychotic depression. However, they conceived their 5th child only 7 weeks after this advice. Angela Yates was an extremely ill young lady who was incapable of making informed decisions about her life. The treating psychiatrist would have known this and therefore would have made it clear to both Angela and Rusty about the risks of future pregnancies. When she did become pregnant, she stopped taking the antipsychotic medication. However, she did appear initially to be coping quite well. That was until the death of her father on March the 12th, 2001. She mutilated herself and she read from the Bible feverishly. She stopped feeding her youngest child, Mary. She was experiencing more psychotic episodes where she believed that TV characters were talking to her and there were spy cameras around the house. She became so incapacitated that she required immediate hospitalisation again. On the 1st of April 2001, she was put under the care of Dr. Mohammed Saeed. She was treated and then released. On May the 3rd, 2001, she degenerated back into a near catatonic state again, and she filled a bathtub in the middle of the day. She'd later told the police that she'd planned to drown the children on that day, but decided against doing it then. So she was hospitalised again the next day after a scheduled doctor's visit, and her psychiatrist determined that she was probably suicidal and had filled the bathtub to drown herself. On her last appointment with Dr. Saeed, he stopped prescribing her the antipsychotic medication, and he adjusted the dose of the antidepressants. He told her at this appointment to think positive thoughts. Quite unbelievably, this is an incredibly dismissive and irresponsible thing for a mental health professional to say. On the 20th of June 2001, she filled the bathtub with water and she drowned her children one by one. She laid them out on the bed, besides her eldest child who she left in the bathtub. She then called 911 to tell them that she'd killed the children. Astonishingly, despite her psychiatric background, she was initially found competent to stand trial. She was sentenced to life with the possibility of parole after 40 years. However, this was then appealed due to the wrongful evidence submitted by Dr. Yates. He'd claimed that a TV show had recently shown an episode with a case very similar to a crime that Angela had committed. Yates had been extensively criticised for his rationales and presenting opinion as fact in many other cases. Therefore, she faced another trial again and pleaded not guilty by reason of insanity. The jury then found her not guilty under the insanity plea, and Angela was hospitalised. On the morning that Angela killed the children, Rusty left for work, leaving the children in her care. And that was despite being told that she should never be left alone with the children. Dr. Saeed testified that he told Rusty that Angela shouldn't be left alone with the children, but Rusty claims that he was never told this. He began leaving her alone with the children in the weeks leading up to the drownings for very short periods of time, and he said this was to improve her independence. He'd announced at a family gathering the weekend before the drownings that he'd decided to leave her alone for an hour each morning and an hour each evening so that she wouldn't become totally dependent on him and his mother for her maternal responsibilities. This is extremely irresponsible and dangerous. In my opinion, he left her alone because it was simply inconvenient for him. Angela's mother was due to turn up about an hour after Rusty left. It was during that hour that she killed the children. She'd waited until Rusty had left that morning, and then she filled up the bathtub. She then went on and drowned the children one by one. She laid them all out on the bed, leaving the oldest one in the bathtub. She then called police, repeatedly saying that she needed an officer, but she didn't initially say why. She then called Rusty and told him to come home straight away. Rusty's brother had given a TV interview where he claimed that Rusty had said that all depressed people needed was a swift kick in the pants to get them motivated again. Rusty had said in the media that he was never told by a psychiatrist that his wife was psychotic, nor that she could harm the children, and that had he have known otherwise, he would never have left the children in her care and would never have had more children. However, Andrea told her prison psychiatrist that prior to their last child, she told Rusty that she didn't want to have sex because Dr. Starbranch had said that she might hurt her children. Rusty, she said, simply asserted his procreative religious beliefs and complimented her on being a good mother and persuaded her that she could handle having more children. Angela and Rusty Yates weren't part of any sort of specific religion, but they did hold a Bible study group at their home 3 times a week. Both of them had said that they'd wanted as many children as they could. However, it's likely that Rusty had pressured her after the birth of their first child to have more. Rusty believed in the teachings of a teacher called Michael Woniecki, who said that evil was always threatening those who believed. He believed that parents were responsible for the salvation of their children. He said that parents would be better off ending their own lives than allowing their children to burn in hell. Angela had said that her children were disrespectful and they wouldn't obey, and therefore they were destined to go to hell. She said that they were marked by Satan and believed that the only way to save them was to kill them. She believed that Satan would be destroyed when she received the death penalty for killing the children. Angela Yates was a bright young woman who had suffered considerably from her mental health from her teens onwards. Prior to having children, she may very well have wanted and intended to have as many children as she could. However, after her first child, she became so unwell that I don't believe she had the mental capacity to agree to have more children. She was suffering psychosis and major depressive episodes. There were likely to be mistakes made with the medications that she was prescribed. She became so unwell that a responsible adult, and you would assume this would have been her husband at the time, should ensure that she's taking her medication. She had a very dismissive mental health professional treating her at one time, simply telling her to think happy thoughts. She had a husband whose view was that those with depression simply needed to kick up the pants to snap them out of it. On top of this, you have the preacher who was involved telling them that their children would burn in hell if their parents didn't raise their children right. It looks to me as though Rusty was more concerned about bringing children into this world than protecting the ones that he had. In my opinion, Angela was treated more as a walking womb than a loved wife by Rusty. In conclusion then, this is a really sad case of a young woman who had complex psychiatric diagnosis. She had a very fragile mind which was very easily influenced by preachers and the Bible, and was led to believe that evil was always chasing them. She said herself that she killed their children because they were destined for hell, and the only way to stop this was their death. I believe that it's likely that Rusty coerced her into having more children. She wasn't being protected by the man that she married. I agree with you, Lakeshire Goodwin. Rusty should have been held accountable for his part in the children's death. Thanks so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video. More importantly, I hope that you learned something new from it. Bye for now.